Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the LiveFitNow podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. As always, the conversation has covered so many different areas. This person was a kickboxer, but we actually go on to cover so many different areas, from kids and exercise, mindset, motivation, how we can approach so many different aspects of life with how we might approach training. I really would love to get your feedback from this, so do hop over either to the LiveFitNow podcast on Instagram or the LiveFitNow podcast page on Facebook. I would love to get more interactive with you and hear your thoughts once you've listened to this episode. So without further ado, here is episode 17 of the LiveFitNow podcast. My guest today is British kickboxing champion at the age of only 18. He went on to reach the pinnacle of the sport, winning 2 world championships, as well as world silver and bronze medals. He subsequently qualified as a kickboxing instructor and personal trainer, massage therapist, as well as an ultimate frisbee and dodgeball coach. He co-founded Green Sky Fitness and has recently started his own podcast. Welcome to the LiveFitNow podcast, Andy Gray. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm very good, thank you. And how are you?
Good, yeah, I'm great, thank you. Can't wait for this
Excellent.
chat.
I'm excited.
So I guess I would really like for you just to give myself and my audience a little bit of background about you, and how did you start kickboxing?
So how did I start kickboxing? I was 5-6 years old, and it was genuinely, I loved the Karate Kid, the original one with Ralph Macchio and Will Zabka. And I've got really supportive parents as well, so they went out and researched local clubs within the area where I grew up, and they found a club that was quite progressive, and it was a good club that was new, and it was looking at freestyle. It wasn't very traditional. It was looking to incorporate taekwondo, kicking and boxing style moves into one style, which it just suited really well. So that was where I started, and I've spoken to people recently about their hobbies and passions, and they grew into it. I loved it from the moment. Before I even started, I loved karate and kickboxing. It's all I wanted to do.
It's the thing you dreamed about as a kid?
Just wanted to be Daniel LaRusso. I just wanted to do the crane kick, to kick somebody. And it just went from there.
Film.
I watch it now and I still absolutely love it. The nostalgic value of it's amazing. And now they've started the series as well, the Cobra Kai series, which is, I think it's a YouTube movie on Netflix, and I just watch it and I just think, oh wow! I look at the martial arts and I don't, necessarily think it's great, but I just love the nostalgia of it all.
Yeah, I mean, do you still kickbox today?
I teach a little bit every now and then, but through competing, my hips don't lie, as Shakira said. So I had an operation last year, and I unfortunately need a hip replacement, which they won't really give me at the moment. So.
They don't like to do it too young, do they? That's the problem.
They don't like to do it young at all. So it's quite detrimental to what I can and can't do. So I try not to teach too much, just do little bits here and there.
Yeah, it's understandable. So were you all about the kickboxing as you grew up, or were you just generally into everything?
Genuinely in everything. I think from about 6 to 10 years old, I just wanted to do sport karate, kickboxing. And then when you get to sort of 11, 12, I wanted to play football with my friends. I wanted to do rugby. The school decided that I was quite good at gymnastics, so they put me into a gymnastics club as well, which I kind of did for a year and fizzled out with that. And I took a bit of a break from the sport karate. I passed my black belt when I was sort of 8, 9 years old, and the association I was in at the time, they wouldn't allow you to take another belt until you became 17 as an adult. They wanted, I don't necessarily agree with it, because I think it gives. And it's a very Western thing that you like to have those progressive elements. You like to have belts, and you like to be able to measure where it is you're going. And from that point of view, I don't agree with it, but I can also see why they do it, if that makes sense. So I became a little bit disillusioned with the sport, and I wasn't really competing at that time either. It wasn't a massively competitive association I was with. So I kind of stepped back a little bit and took a bit of a 2-year hiatus from the sport, and went off and experimented and did rugby and football, gymnastics, and all the other things that were going on at school with my friends. And then at about 13 years old, I got the opportunity to go back to my original club, and from there I was hooked again and never really looked back after that.
Sounds great. I'd love to hear. So I want to talk to you as an athlete. So how did you used to train? What was training to you? How much time did you have to dedicate to it? And, what does it mean to your life at that point?
So when I was sort of growing up, 15, 16, 17-year-old, I was training maybe 3 times a week, 3, 4 times, just kickboxing. And then as a young person, not driving, I was obviously out and about with my friends. So the fitness naturally as a young person was probably there, and a lack of education as well. Instructors then didn't really, I'll go into that in a moment, but I didn't do massive amounts other than kickboxing, so maybe sort of 4 or 5 hours a week. And then as I was winning local tournaments, I really thought I need to test myself here. So I went down to a British tournament when I was 17, and I was fighting adults from being like 15, 16 years old. And the first British Open that I went to was just a massive education. I went down there, I got beat off pretty convincingly as well off the reigning British champion. And that was when my mindset changed. I knew I had to come back and I had to go away and train really hard if I wanted to get to the level that I thought I could get to. So after that, it was a case, well, I'm going to start running. I'm going to start going to the gym a little bit. I'm going to start training more, and I'm going to tailor my training to do this, this, and this, which stood me in good stead. So when I got to 18, I went back to the British Championships a year, and I won the British Championships. Went out, got selected for British training. So I was going down to London and Birmingham, and I was training with the rest of the GB squad. And that was a massive motivator as well. You can see the professionalism in these people. And you're going, well, actually, yeah, I've won a British title. Maybe it was a bit of a fluke. I don't know. Because you're watching other people in the standards, and you're listening to how they train, and you're watching how they break things down. So again, that was another one where I need to go, well, okay, I've worked hard to win this first British title, but if I really want to push on from here and retain that and do other things, I really need to book my ideas up. And the same year, I actually got an invitation to the European Championships in Italy in 2002. So it was in Lido di Jesolo, just outside Venice. It was a purpose-built kickboxing stadium, which was amazing. But again, it was naivety and a lack of education. I just totally undertrained for it, underestimated it, didn't understand how big this tournament was going to be. I mean, when I got my letter, I thought my friends had sent it through the post for a joke. I genuinely just didn't think I was ever going to get selected for the GB team. So I got out there, and I trained really, really hard for what I thought it was going to be. But when I got there, I realised very, very quickly that the whole process needed to change when I got home again. So it became World Championships after that, just because the following year I retained the British title and qualified for a different World Championships. And two of my friends actually went to be with that one with me, which made the whole process a lot easier. So we went to train about 11 times a week after that. So we were doing running, we were doing late at night, early mornings, 4 or 5 times a week, kickboxing, weight sessions, technique sessions, and that's when it really got serious.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of moments, it felt like it was a switch flicking for you, and obviously your mindset took you to, okay, I need to change this up to be able to get to the level where these other people are. But I guess it could have just as easily gone the other way, and you just thought, oh, I'm not good enough, and just you could have given up. What do you think? Do you know yourself well enough to know what it is in you that made you choose to put more into it than just to give up?
I genuinely think it was a love for the sport. I loved the idea that I could potentially go and travel different places around Europe and America. I know I would have to pay for them, but them experiences, I'd rather pay for those experiences, because a lot of the tournaments that I ended up going to weren't in tourist areas. They were very much rural to where tourists would go. So you were seeing different parts of the culture, different places in the country that you just genuinely wouldn't go to. So I think that for me personally, the travel element was a big motivator. The love for the sport was another one. And I think it's almost the kudos of being able to go, well, actually, I was a British champion, or I represented my country at a European Championships or a World Championships. And then on top of that, I was doing it with my friends as well, which made it easy.
Yeah, and I think it probably doesn't need to be said. Clearly a very competitive person.
Yes, I don't like not winning. I can handle losing if I get beat off someone and I know I've put my best in it, but I don't like not winning. I just genuinely, I love the feeling of winning and be able to go, I'm the best at something. So very competitive. I'm not a team player though. I'm an individual. I struggle with team sports. I really do. I think people can hide behind other people and they don't have to put 100% in, and that's not my mentality.
You want to rely on yourself.
One of my ethos is don't practice bad habits. And I think it's something trying, especially young people, when I go to my friends' clubs or I teach at other places, and I see people practice bad habits and then they wonder why they're not getting the results. And I just think because you practice bad habits, it then becomes habitual when you get into the arena. So
did you figure out your own bad habits, or did you have good coaches around you at the time?
I was really fortunate that my two very, very good friends, my best friends that I competed with, were winning British titles, and when we went to World Championships, we were winning world medals together. So I didn't have to look very far to find world-class athletes to train with. And we very quickly realised the association we were with wasn't a massively competitive association. And not that we'd outgrown an association, but we were just going in a very different direction. So we actually set up by ourselves and went and because we were going to different training with GB and with England and other coaches from around the country, we were able to draw from their experiences and apply to our own training techniques, and then also give back to the young people and the adults that we were coaching as well. So I think that's when people become almost stagnant, when they think they know everything. And it's not about that. It's about still trying to learn from other people and not thinking you're the best just because you maybe won a medal. Because there's other coaches out there who have been doing this a lot longer. Or there might just be someone who's new and up and coming who's got some really good ideas where you think, actually, I could use that and I could apply that to my style of training.
Yeah, that could work. And so if there are any young people that want to become kickboxing champions, have you got any top tips on how they need to approach training or what they need to do in order to climb up?
I think, first of all, don't practice bad habits. Be open to criticism and open to learning from new people. And don't just do kickboxing. Go and try other styles of martial arts. Go and try other sports. The hardest thing that I ever did was ballet stretching class, is to develop my kickboxing. And honestly, it was horrendous. I've never felt pain like that after day after. It was absolutely brilliant as well, and it certainly developed my stretching, my flexibility, and it benefited me massively when it come to fighting. I suppose a lot of people say train hard, fight easy, or train hard, work easy, and I get that. I'd rather train hard and fight hard or work hard, but it very much is about doing them things, train hard, so that when it becomes the day, you're not worrying about your fitness, or you're not worrying about flexibility. You can just concentrate on actually competing. And I think another one is it's a game. It's not. People say fighting. There's 3 referees, or there's 3 judges and a referee. It's a game. You've got to impress 3 people to win. So don't treat it like a fight. Treat it as a game.
And if there are parents that are perhaps a little bit nervous of their kids taking part, is it a very violent sport, or is it, as you say, if there are 3 referees, I'm guessing they are controlling it to make sure it's as safe as it can be for a contact sport?
100%. So I did something called continuous kickboxing, which means you can't knock people out. It's almost a bit like the amateur boxing, where it's a points-based system. I know amateur boxing you can knock people out. We wear head guards, we wear gun guards. We had feet pads, shin pads. So we were all very well protected. And at the end of the day, the judge and the referees are there to protect you and make sure you're safe. I think a lot of parents get worried about not so much the competition element. I think they get more worried about the outside of the sport element and what it affects in the street. And I can honestly say it was never something that interested me growing up, was ever having a fight. I was not interested in violence, and it just taught me discipline, and it made me think a little bit more, actually, if I need to defend myself, I've got some tools I could use. However, I've probably learned more tools how to talk myself out of that element and not have a fight, which is one of the biggest things I ever took away from the sport.
I was literally going to ask you that. What was the biggest sort of lesson that you learned? So
that was one of them. Discipline was certainly one. It's one of them ones. You're only ever a punch away from prison. Why would you ever want to do that? So just because you may be good at something, or you learn how to throw a technique, it shouldn't be an arrogant thing, and it shouldn't be I can protect myself and I need to go around showing everyone how macho I am. It's not about that. It's very much, if you're very good at something, just do it on the mat or in the ring, and let your skill and ability prove to people how good you are at something. So from a kickboxing point of view, that's one massive thing I got. Friendships, just having a hobby. the friendships I've got. I met my wife through kickboxing, so my wife competed. I met her at the World Championships. You know, and the people around the world now being able to just go on Facebook and say, oh yeah, such and such a candidate, such and such. In different places around the world, it's been absolutely fantastic.
So when did you stop competing, and what was it that made you leave the sport?
So I stopped competing in 2010. I won the World Championships in 2009. I won the Nationals again in 2010. And my hips was just starting to really hurt in about, so it was how old was I in 2010? Sort of late 20s, mid to late 20s. And it was just becoming a bit of a difficult situation to motivate myself because my hips were hurting so much after I competed or after I'd trained. And I really then was just, I did have a go. I made a bit of a comeback in 2016 and I never missed competing. I'm not one of those guys who said, oh yeah, I've really struggled. And because it was a hobby as well, you know, it was never a profession. So I never struggled with the transition of not competing to no longer do it. I was just, but I started dreaming about it. And my friend said, well, if you're dreaming about it, why don't you have a go? So I did, and I went to Italy and I trained for a good solid 10 weeks. And I was in probably the best shape I've ever been in. But physically, my body wouldn't allow it to do what I wanted to do. And I knew 20 seconds into my first fight, I knew that was it. I would never compete again.
Oh, at least you did it though.
Oh, 100%. It's, you know, I've not really got any regrets in the sport. It was very much, I did what I wanted to do. We spoke just a little bit prior to this interview, and I'm lazy by design. So I picked and chose when I wanted to compete, and I kind of managed myself well. And I think by managing it that way, I didn't fall out with the love of the sport. It never became a chore. It was always, I did something for the love of doing it rather than, oh, I've got to compete again or I've got to do this. It was very much, I did it on my terms, which I was pleased with.
Yeah, and that's great. It's a great approach to have, and it's much more satisfying, I think, by the end if you don't get that bitterness. So what happened to your training when you came to an end, when you decided back in 2010 that you were going to stop? What happened with your training?
I still trained, so I was still, you know, going to the clubs, and I was still training with my friends and all that. It was just on a very low level. I wasn't putting in the hard work that I had to do. I picked and choose when I wanted to train. I taught a little bit more and tried to pass on the knowledge that I had picked up, and I still try and do that now if I can. And that was it really. And then life takes over a little bit. I've got 3 little girls now as well. So I had a club when I was younger, and just because I moved locations, I had to give up that club. But I was fortunate that I had a friend in the area who took my students on with him, and the commitment was huge. And it's not fair to have so many people in a club relying on you, but then I've got a family as well now. So to have that commitment again now would just be totally unfair on my young family that I've got. So at the moment, a kickboxing club's certainly not something I'd ever want again. But certainly not in the near future. And I think it's a bit of a sad story. I think that's become a very diluted sport in the UK now as well. It used to be back when I competed more, there was only 2-3 large organisations that were very reputable. If you won one of their titles, you could almost say I'm a good British champion, or I'm a good English champion, or a world champion. And now every man the dog seems to have an association, and it's a shame because you get lots of very good fighters at every association. However, if they all just went to the 2 or 3 big ones that they used to be, the standard of competition would be a lot higher.
Yeah. They'd all be put into the same pool as well, wouldn't they? So they would drive each other further as well, because they'd have to if they wanted to be the one champion at the end.
Yeah, 100%. So there's still a couple of tournaments around the world that offer that sort of prestigious title, but in the UK, there's just a lot of associations and a lot of different British titles, and it's unfortunate.
I guess it needs some sort of strong figureheads, perhaps, to be able to bring them together. It's often difficult with politics in sport, though, isn't it?
I think because it's an amateur sport as well. There's a lot of, I can understand why there's so many set up, because everyone thinks they can do something better, and they all do little elements better than each other. But if they all came together and did it, it could be an absolutely fantastic association. There's still 1 or 2 massive associations out there who are doing it very good, and they're very prestigious. And if you win those ones, they're very good. So you never know. People might get there eventually.
Yeah. So I guess now you've really moved into helping people in different ways. So what do you spend most of your time doing now, and which of those skills that you learned during kickboxing have you pulled through into that?
I'd probably say it's a mentality, isn't it? You know, there's going to be times when things get very, very hard, and talk about this quite often, that people always see the medals or they always see the glory, but they don't see the hard work you're putting into stuff. And then picked up, in fact, one of the Americans came over and he did a seminar, and he lived by the motto of 3 S's, which is sacrifice, struggle, succeed. And we were doing that anyway. He just put into them 3 words, which I really liked. And you know, there is a lot of sacrifices and struggles, but actually, if you do that and you're willing to put in the work, you will succeed at the end of that. So definitely brought that mentality out with me. And when I'm helping people now, whether it's in a personal training, whether it's in a class situation, or my company's a community risk company, so we work with a lot of different groups within the community. So we work with people with mental health, we work with parents and families. And it is very much, you know, yes, things might be a little bit hard now, or you might not be where you want to be, but just keep sacrificing, keep struggling through, because the end goal is what we're looking to. We're not looking for things don't change in a day. You have to put in that hard work in order to get where you want to be. And if you're reaching for the sky, you might have to stop off at a few clouds on the way. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think time and consistency is one of the hardest thing to make people realize, I guess. You know, once you've been through it, you know it takes that, and it does take a lot of commitment. But you know, we live in an age when we're sold quick magical pills and fixes, when actually in reality that is not the case. You want to get good at anything or get to any sort of massive goal, it takes time, perseverance, and a lot of consistency, and that's a lot more difficult to sell, isn't it?
It's a lot harder to sell, because as you say, we live in a world where everybody wants something yesterday. You look at your Netflixes, your Amazon Prime, you can buy everything and get it the next day. You can binge watch box sets now instead of having to wait week on week. And it is a very much give me this now. But actually, if you look at how long it's took you to get where you are now, you need to realise that it's going to be the same process in order to achieve something. So, but I think I'm also a little bit more relaxed with things now as well. I think, you know, try not to stress over the little things. Just kind of let it go and enjoy the now and enjoy the journey that you're on, rather than trying to get that a final goal. When life's a journey, it's not a destination, isn't it? So I know I've pinched that quote. I didn't make that up.
No, it's a good quote though. It's so true,
it is, yeah.
Because the truth is, you can do anything for short term, and yes, you can get results. But if you then go immediately back to your old habits or other bad, you know, less good habits, it's not going to stick. It really is about life. It's a lifestyle. It's what you want to do for the long term, how you want to feel in the long term, and it just isn't quick fix. You can make yourself feel better in a few days, but not forever.
Well, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely got to be a lifestyle choice, a lifestyle decision. I mean, it depends what the goal is as well, really, doesn't it? You know, I always see life as a competition. I always see winners or losers. I don't really see any grey area. I've also been working with like young unemployed people for quite a long time, and you ask them about job applications or CVs. Why put in a bad one? You're in a competition. Somebody's going to get that job, so you need to look at it as though, well, there's going to be a winner or a loser. And it doesn't matter if you lose 99 times, because you'll probably remember the 100th time when you do win. And it doesn't matter if you fail 99 times. You know, I've started so many projects at work, and they've been well thought out, they've been researched, but just when they've come to launch, they just haven't went the way we want. But all I did was learn a project that I didn't need to do, or I learned ways that I needed to change. I never really focused on, was it really a failure? I just think, well, it didn't work, okay, but I've got X, Y, and Z worth of information from that, and I can then use that for the next project that I run. So I think people just need to get into that mentality sometimes, that it's winning or losing, but if you do lose, accept it and just learn from it, because you can learn more from a loss a lot of the time.
Like you said earlier, it's just about not keep reinforcing bad habits. Once you've spotted something that's not working,
good habits.
You switch it up.
100%.
You brought up the fact that you work with different groups in the community a lot. Is that mostly focused around sport, or do you actually look at different ways people can change their lifestyle and their life?
So my background was always working with young people around sort of employability, and then I got sick of doing that, really, because it was moving in a direction I didn't want to do it, and a lot of funding around the UK was for helping young people back into employment, and every man and the dog was teaching employability, and I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. So my business partner and myself, we said, well, we're really into sport. Football is so oversubscribed in the UK, and a lot of people don't do it very good. And we were waiting for a football charity at the time. Why don't we look at different sports? You know, when I was a kid at school, if you didn't play football or rugby, you were deemed pretty bad at sport.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, not really. I do sport, karate, kickboxing. I'm pretty good at it. And I think I could do okay at this as I got older. So it was very much, well, what else can we do? And then I discovered dodgeball and ultimate frisbee. It's just two super inclusive sports. You know, I'd never played them in my life. I had just seen them and I thought, wow, I'd love to have a go at this. So I got in touch with the government bodies, and now we've got qualifications in them. We do a lot of work for British Dodgeball, so we teach all their coaching qualifications around the north of England. But the kids that we see play dodgeball who would probably never be picked up in mainstream sports like football, rugby, netball, are just absolutely amazing at this sport. And there's opportunities out there to go and play in world championships and in world cups around the world and in British tournaments. And those are the types of things, well, when I was a kid, being able to say I was a British champion would have, especially as a kid, if I compete from younger, that would have been amazing to say. For kids now to be able to go, well, actually, I'm going to play in a British Championships for a dodgeball or for ultimate frisbee or whatever it is, the sport they want to play. It's a massive motivating factor. So being able to offer kids sports that aren't the norm is just, it's brilliant to do.
It's so important. I couldn't agree with you more. It's so true. I think 2012 obviously helped with the Olympics because funding has changed a lot for different sports. But yeah, you have those key sports within schools. And if you weren't picked for those teams, basically that was your sport over if you weren't doing anything outside because you were completely disengaged. You weren't interested. You're not playing for the teams. Quite honestly, a lot of the times the teachers weren't that interested once you weren't in the teams. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't into sport at school at all, really. I liked swimming, so that was something I did outside. And then that would have been that. And it was the moment that I took myself into a gym and found something that I liked. And it was that moment when I realized I do not believe there is not a sport of some kind for everybody. There is a way of moving
has to be.
that is for everybody. You just haven't tried it yet. And it's amazing that you've got people like yourselves that are doing it.
Yeah, there's a great documentary on Netflix as well by a guy called Brodie Smith, and he does like frisbee trick shots on YouTube, and that's how we can discover the game Ultimate Frisbee. But there's a great series on Netflix, and it's about different sports that are played. And there's like battleships where the at universities in America, they've got two canoes and they've got to sink each other's ships, and it's just, but it's amazing. And I just think, wow, you know, get out there, do something that it doesn't have to be competitive. It's really interesting to watch that one. And we've also kind of moving on from that a little bit, but as the area I live in, childhood obesity is huge, and I just think it's absolutely tragic that under fives are classed as obese. And I don't necessarily always think it's a parent neglect's the wrong word, but I don't necessarily think it's parents not trying. I just think they get so caught up with work and with kids, and the easiest thing to say I'm not doing today is exercise. And I sat down with my wife and I said, well, why don't we exercise? And it was just genuinely, we've got kids and we don't have as much time. It's an excuse. So we created something called Gym Fins, the Infant Gym. And that's an opportunity now for parents to come along and train with their children. So we try to do sort of preschool children, but we've had fantastic results from that as well.
Yeah. I think it's really important, and your time is limited. We are all busy. We make ourselves busier and busier. Although I do believe most people, we could all stop scrolling for 10 more minutes a day and find 10 minutes. But
100%.
Kids also, it's very easy to tell them what you want to do. But if they're seeing you do it, that's going in. They copy. They copy more than they listen. 100%. And I think it's just so powerful, and it makes you bond as well. And it normalizes movement at a very young age, so that by the time you get older, it's just part of your life. You don't think, I must go and exercise necessarily, because it's just life. Yeah,
it's just trying to create that role model within the social setting. And as I say, it's not necessarily parents not wanting to do that. I just think it's a lack of time, a lack of opportunity, because it gets to 8 or 9 o'clock at night when the kids are in bed. Can you really bother to go out sometimes? No, you can't be bothered to go and do some exercise. So all we try to do is take away that. And it was very much, we talking about sort of failures and learning from mistakes. We very much focused that on getting kids active. But actually, when we looked at it, it wasn't. It was about getting parents active in front of the kids and getting the kids involved in that. So we've got little mini steppers, we've got a couple of little mini treadmills, so the kids can feel like they're copying off their parents, and they absolutely love it. We've got a little weights machine for the kids. I mean, it's dead light, but they absolutely love it. They feel like they join in with their parents, and then they do other little things like pad work. So, they love it. It's absolutely brilliant. But the parents get so much from it, as you say. They become a positive role model. They build bonds. The kids develop all the gross motor skills. So it's just been a nice way to get. And I'm hoping that lockdown kind of encourages more people to get involved with the kids, because just going out for a walk, to have a social distance, talk with friends, and it's getting people involved and active, probably without them realising they're doing it.
Yeah, I think people have, or certainly some people have realised during this time that there's a lot you can do at home as well. It doesn't have to be a lot. You could just be dancing around your kitchen while you're getting the dinner ready.
Yeah.
We just need to be a more active society that moves more, rather than we spend too much time sitting, and we're not designed to be sat down all the time, and it's just trying to figure out how to make it less of a barrier. I think there's a big barrier for a lot of people, particularly if they have the idea that they hate exercise. But it is easy. It's just figuring out how to make it work for you, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just trying to give, people like yourselves, people like what we do, it's just trying to give people that opportunity and make things maybe a little bit less intimidating for people to get involved, taking away that sort of apprehension before they do a first class. And we all have to start somewhere. So,
I don't know many people that aren't terrified the first time they walk into a class or the gym, or you work up all these potential scenarios. Rarely that ever happen. But it is that fear of, because we don't like change and the unknown, we get that fear. It's just trying to realise that you can break through it in the right environment.
When we were competing, we always, and a lot of people, obviously the anticipation is worse than the confrontation, and we always used fear was future events appear real. And that's all we used to say it was, actually I'm going to have to go and do this, I'm going to have to do that. But just because it appears real, but once you get there, it's probably going to be okay.
Yeah. So you've got to convince your brain of it, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, 100%. It's mentality, and that's one thing I definitely took away from competing. It's mentality over physicality. It's all about little triggers. So we used to get a neuro-linguistic programming coach who used to come in and used to do stuff with our young elite athletes who kickboxing, used to come in and do stuff for them so they could work on that trigger point and try and take away the whole apprehension of going to a first British title or a first world championships. And it really, really helped. Really helps just learn to deal with the mind. The mind's a wonderful thing, but can also be your biggest enemy as well.
It can. It is about training your brain as much as your body, isn't it? Without doubt.
Yeah.
So what would your top tips be for people in general to take better care of their health?
Keep it fun, personally, and think about why you're doing that. I know certainly before I was a parent, I went through phases where I wasn't as bothered, and it didn't bother me. As I said, I was in control of when I used to kickbox, and if I didn't enjoy it, I would stop doing it, and I would do other little things. But it's about why. So instead of going, I don't use vanity as any sort of, I'm never going to have a 6-pack, and I don't want a 6-pack. It's not something I want, because I genuinely, I still enjoy eating. I still enjoy beer every now and then. And it's about going, am I just doing this for vanity, or am I doing it for health reasons, or am I doing it for a purpose? So my kids are very much now, why do I want to stay active? Because I want to enjoy my children. They're only young. I don't want them getting old and going, well, my dad couldn't play with me because he was too sore, or he was too big, or whatever the excuse is. And I think it's about just having a motivating factor instead of just being a vanity thing for me personally. Have something, if it's just for your health, great. Do it because you want to feel better, because you want to look better. Yes, certainly feel more comfortable. I know that comes with vanity, but that's not always just a vanity thing. It's not trying to impress somebody else, is what I'm trying to say. Is pretty much do it for you and find a really good motivational factor. That would be my advice to people. But find something you just enjoy doing.
Yeah, it's the best place to start. It's the thing you'll keep doing because you love it.
Yeah,
it's definitely the thing that keeps you on track, and also making sure that you figure out what you want to do, because there are so many, there's so many pressures in society, and you can easily get influenced by how you're meant to look and what you're meant to do, and even your neighbours. You need to try, and it is difficult because it's so ingrained, but really, really look inwardly to what you want to be doing rather than what you feel you should be doing, because otherwise you're going to be constantly battling with yourself.
Yeah, of course. And it's like, you see people doing couch to 5K, if you're just doing the couch to 5K, what an amazing achievement. If you've never done that before, you can't then compare yourself to a marathon runner. You literally have to go, well, actually, I've done a 5K. That's amazing. And it's having them little steps and the little achievable goals before.
Yeah.
You know, if a marathon's your end product, go for it. But just take your time, get there, and don't set yourself unrealistic targets. But but also the mentality side of things. You know, you have to be willing to accept that things are going to get hard. It's not going to be easy all the time. But anything that's worth it rarely is easy to get.
Exactly. That's where the satisfaction comes in. And I think it's also about, you know, being realistic with those goals, but realizing that everyone has to start from the beginning. The best person in the world at something was a beginner once. And so often people say, oh, it's a stupid question. I'm like, well, of course it's not a stupid question. You don't know the answer. And there's so many things that, you know, for people like us, there was a lot of knowledge that we have, but we had to learn it at some point. And sometimes,
100%.
even though I'm sure you have it too, it's like there are some things you kind of think, oh, most people probably know that by now, but you will still meet people that actually haven't got a clue, and you have to start from the ground up.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No, definitely not.
And it become your whole life, but you have
100%.
to start from the beginning, and it's hard to start from the beginning, but it is worth it.
It is, and I think certainly from a competition point of view, when things were getting hard, I always, if it was a tournament time, there was always one thing that stood out to me in a training block that I would do that I just thought, this is the end of the world. If someone wants to swallow me up now, you can, because I hate this part of my training. But it was that really hard part, and knowing that I got through it made any of the harder parts easy to get through, because I knew I'd already done something that was so hard where I thought I couldn't go on, actually. And I think that's probably, especially when people are training, I sometimes like to take my clients to places that are really, really uncomfortable, and to the point where they think, I don't think I can do this. But moving on from there, they can always refer back to that point and go, well, actually, I did that. So anything after that, I know for a fact I can do it. And it's, again, just a mental trigger, but it's not. I think everyone should try and get something like that, even if it's a life situation. I do a talk called Dark Path, Light Path, and I genuinely believe that everybody has to go down a dark path in order to get a light path. And it's just remembering that. Yeah,
it's true. The amount of times people say, oh, I can't do that. And they do, because we know that they can.
Yeah.
And once you push through, everyone can do more than they think they can.
Certainly.
Even those of us who can push ourselves, there's still something that we can be pushed further, because our brain is trying to stop us. So,
definitely.
yeah.
And I think that's the important thing. It is only the brain telling you to stop. Your body won't give up. It's only your brain telling you to give up. So just try and push through that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this can be linked with your the kickboxing or your job now, or anything you like, really. Are there any myths that you would like to bust that you think people perhaps have the wrong end of the stick?
Oh, that's a good question. Are there any myths that I would like to bust? Oh, I feel really on the spot now. I feel like I'm going to have to definitely have a think about this one. Is there any myths I would like to bust? I think it is just the whole, what we've already talked about, you know, a lot of people who are body conscious and body goals can't be achieved in a short space of time to be sustainable. There's so many programs out there promising you a dream and giving you your money back if you do X, Y, and Z over X many weeks. Actually, let's be real. They're a very good sales tool, and they've got fantastic marketing, but that's why people go back, because it doesn't sustain and it doesn't last. So that would be my myth, is just don't believe everything you hear on social media. Don't believe everything you read in the news. Go and speak to a professional. And even professionals, you know, I'm not going to profess I know everything, because I don't. And there's people out there who I'm quite happy to go, I don't really know. Have a look at this person, because their information is absolutely fantastic. Take that away. So just don't believe everything you're saying, you know, everything that you hear. And don't be me from a personal training point of view. I'm quite open and honest with my clients. If I don't know, I just say, look, I don't know. I'll find out for you, or I'll refer them somewhere else. Yeah. So that would be my myth buster. Just don't believe everything you read.
I like it. That's really good. I like that one. And
well,
it's true. It was. I know, it completely thrown. I often try and throw a question like that.
I like it.
But it's interesting, really, because I think that is so often the case, and it's so easy to sell people something. But we never stop learning. There is so much to know. The more you start getting into it, you realize how much more there is that you don't know yet. Yeah. And I think to be able to hold your hands up / point someone in the right direction. But that's why I think it's so important to be curious for yourself, because you need to get to know yourself, your own body, what makes you tick, how you can drive and motivate yourself, and how you can train and push yourself more, because no one's going to know you better than yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
And therefore, to be curious allows you to just keep growing.
Oh, definitely. I think it's a self journey, isn't it? You know, I don't do well with team sports, and I'm quite glad I don't, because I've probably discovered more about myself. Whereas if you're in a team, you don't learn as much about yourself, because you can hide behind other people. You can rely on someone else's talent or drive. If it's an individual goal, it's an individual thing, and most goals are individual. Then you do have to learn about yourself and keep learning and try and, certainly this day and age, because social media is so accessible, you have to try and sift through the good information and the bad information. And it's one of the problems I think we have in the UK, is that dietitian is governed by UK law, whereas nutritionist isn't. So anybody can call himself a nutritionist and try and sell you a wonder pill or a wonder shake.
Yeah, I actually really feel for the nutritionists that have studied for years, and they've got degrees behind them and all sorts of study. They have put so much time and money into learning things in real depth, and they're being called the same thing as someone that's done a couple of days course, essentially. I really feel for them, because that must be so frustrating, because they've got the same title but they've got nowhere near the same experience and expertise.
100%. And that, I suppose that's some advice for your listeners, is seek a qualified nutritionist, someone who's got all the letters after the name to go, well, actually, I know the science behind it, I can tell you exactly what you need to know. And I also think just try to complicate things. Society does know what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. Why? And I think that's where the sales comes into it. They complicate people and trick them into buying stuff. And actually, if you just told them a little bit of honesty, you know, you're losing weight, getting a calorie deficit, don't worry about anything else at the moment, because you don't need to think about that. So
I say that so often. It's simple but hard.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but we live in a society that's trying to bombard us with everything else. So the really simple things are really hard to do, but if you stick with it, you will get those results.
100%. And I think it's very much, it's not a quick fix. You have to practice good habits.
Yeah. Practice good habits and enjoy it. That's where you've got to get some, enjoyment out of it, I think. Because otherwise, if you hate every single aspect of the changes that you've made, you're not going to stick with it for very long, and you're not going to get there ultimately. So
no.
Yeah, it's really
Definitely
important.
Not.
I got another biggie.
Go on, then,
Again, this can be personally or professionally. It's up to you. What inspires you?
Well, I've been really fortunate in my life that I've had ready-made role models and ready-made inspirations on my doorstep. So I think growing up, my brother, I was 17. My brother, I just won a British title, actually. And then my brother was run over 2 days later. So I went from being kind of on top of the world to being like, oh my goodness, my brother was run over and nearly died. And to the point he had to teach himself to walk and talk again. But watching his journey for over the years has just been a massive inspiration. And it's one of them ones where I think, well, if he can do this, that, and the other, I got absolutely no excuses whatsoever. So my brother was certainly one of my inspirations, and continues to be one of my inspirations when it comes to hard work and looking at what I can and can't do from a mentality point of view and a physical point of view. I lost my dad 5 years ago to motor neuron disease, and it's just it obviously became a lot more socially aware due to the Ice Bucket Challenge. But before my dad I didn't really know what MND was. I'd seen Stephen Hawkins and kind of knew a little bit, but I didn't realise that most people have a 2 to 5 year lifespan from when they're diagnosed. Right. But watching the way my dad dealt with that disease was just absolutely amazing. I was in awe of it. He was so good at compartmentalising things. So once he couldn't do something, it was like, okay, there it's done. I can't do that anymore. So I remember being on holiday coming back, and my mum rang us and just said, "Oh, look, your dad can't drive anymore." And I was like, "What do you mean? He's only been away for like 11 days." And he was sat on the drive in the car for 25 minutes, and he came back in the house, and my mum said, "What, you forgot?" I said, "Oh, nothing." She went, "What do you mean?" He said, "I've been sat in the car for 25 minutes trying to drive. I can't do it anymore." And that was it, done.
Oh.
And to the point where he had things put in place. So my dad actually chose when he passed away. He passed away in the house as well, and he knew that MND wasn't going to beat him. Just watching that whole, sorry for getting into it a little bit too much,
no, please.
But just the whole process was just I was in awe of him, just the whole decisions that he's made, the fact that, you know, he actually planned his own funeral because he found it therapeutic, but all those little things have just, you know, what excuse have I got when I've just watched somebody go through such a tragic disease and absolutely face it head on and just be absolutely amazing with the whole ordeal. I'll never forget, was it the day he died? I think it was the day he decided that he wanted to go. He called the people that were coming in to put him to sleep the dream team, and that was his mentality. And he just turned around and went, "Look, son, I know things are going to be hard, but not for me because I won't be here." And he said it with a little bit of a wry smile, which was just, it was heart-wrenching, but at the same time, it made light of a terrible situation. And just the way he dealt with it was just amazing. So he's certainly a massive motivator and inspiration in my life. And then I suppose, obviously, my wife and children now are huge inspirations as well. What I do in life now is all about them, and I do it for them. So yeah, and my mom's, you know, what she's dealt with, having to deal with my brother, deal with my dad. So I've been really fortunate. I haven't had to look too far for inspiration in my life.
You've had literally perspective smack bang in front of you that you couldn't ignore, where I think so many people can get caught up in the bubble of their own lives. You didn't have that, I guess. And also it sounds like that strong mentality is strong through your family, because clearly your dad, your brother, yourself,
maybe because I don't come from a sporting family neither. So I just came from I've just been fortunate. I've had a nice life, and it's one of the reasons I do a lot of the work that I do is if I can help someone even live a small percentage of the life that I feel like I've lived, that'll be great, because, you know, I have been very, very fortunate in my life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. That was
really
great.
It was the question. It was a biggie, you said, so I thought I'd better give you a big answer.
You did. You did not disappoint. Why did you start your podcast? I'm guessing it might be how you finished that last question, that you just want to try and help people.
A little bit, yeah, but it was also for me. I went from doing a hobby that I absolutely loved and never ever once saw it as a career progression. It was never something I thought, I want to be a professional kickboxer, I want to go down the MMA route. And I wanted to understand how other people's hobbies had impacted their life decisions and career choices, and just to see where I had took them in life. So really, I suppose from a selfish point of view, it was for me. I wanted to find out about other people's experience to be able to then pass on and say, well, you know, find a hobby. Because I think a lot of people I think everyone should have a hobby, and I don't care if it's tiddlywinks, if it's knitting, if it's a sport. It could be absolutely anything. I find that you find yourself in social circles where people have got the same interests, and it kind of keeps you on a good path, rather than maybe not having a hobby and going and trying something that maybe isn't proactive, isn't creative, and can lead down the wrong path a little bit. You know, I'm trying to be quite PC when I'm saying that, but you get where I'm coming from, I hope. Yeah. I just think if you've got a hobby, you tend to fall into a social circle, and you build friendships, you develop relationships. And I just want to hear how other people were doing that, and almost just educating people that, yes, people have been successful in hobbies or in careers, but it hasn't been easy. They've all had to work hard to get there, and it hasn't been handed them on a plate. So yeah, that's why.
I like it. And what is the podcast called, in case we want to go and have a listen?
It's called Hobby of the Lifestyle.
Brilliant. I'll put it in the show notes.
No, perfect. Yeah, very much looks at how our hobbies impact life decisions and career choices.
Yeah, they can play a massive part in our lives, can't they? It's, again, I think it so easily can be overlooked as to how big a part they can play, particularly if you're doing a job that you don't necessarily get a lot of happiness out of, shall we say. Yeah, you can actually get that contentment from just really focusing the rest of your energy on something that you love.
Definitely, yeah, it can be an escapism, and I think we need that escapism from reality sometimes, and just to have an hour or a couple of hours where you don't have to think about something. I even look at the life skills you develop. My little girls, my 6-year-old, my 3-year-old, both competing. They're both competing from being 3-year-old on stages, you know, and they're performing to sort of 200-300 people at sometimes. I don't care if they never dance as a profession. I don't even care if they quit the hobby. I hope they don't, because they're fantastic at it and I know they love it. But if they did quit, it's the life experiences they've got from that. When they get older, they can still have performed in front of 300-400 people. And it almost goes onto a CV. It goes towards a job. Well, actually, I can perform. I've done that in the past. So I just think the life skills that you can take away from hobbies are absolutely fantastic as well.
Yeah, building in that sort of confidence at that young an age, you stop the doubt, don't you? It stops
100%.
You know, you can't do that. Well, you know you can because you've already done it.
Well, 100%. And I remember years ago we did a brain training exercise. We had a guest speaker come in, and it's probably the most valuable lesson that I've ever took away was our kids don't know what the word nervous means. So we don't say to our family, I mean, they've heard the word nervous, and because the 6-year-olds getting older, they've got an understanding of what it is. But I was asked the question, I suppose, I'm going to turn an interview with Victoria, and I asked you the question, how do you know what nervous is?
Yeah, it's got to have been described to you in some way at some point, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and most people do describe the feeling of what nervous is, but they're not telling you how they know what it is. And it's literally someone that you've obviously went to do something that was important, and a parent or a teacher saying, oh, that's nervous. So we tell our kids it's excitement. So they don't associate that feeling with nervousness. So hopefully, as they get older, they'll only associate that feeling with, actually, I'm really excited, or I'm going to give a great performance. And I think that needs a change in society. Because it's all good saying, oh yeah, nerves are good. Nerves are good. Why are they good? You're not telling someone how they're good. Try and change the association with the feeling and the mindset early on, and then we can hopefully take away that apprehension and nervousness. So
I think there's a lot of confusion with emotions. I think there's too much good and bad linked with emotions as well. Like it's good if you're happy and laughing and all those sorts of things, but you know, if you're sad or that's a bad thing, which that's not true either. But we do have to allow ourselves to feel these things, let go of it, and also try and realize what we can learn from it.
Definitely.
If you are scared of something, you can say, well, why are you scared of it? And then you overcome it and you realize it's nothing to be scared of anymore. It's like it's the building blocks, isn't it? It's making sure you've got 100%. The right foundation to use the right positive affirmations from it, rather than just crippling yourself with the nerves or the fear or whatever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
So I took that and I stole that and I borrowed that forever, and I run with that now.
It's powerful. I think that's something we all need to know. It is important. The words that we not only use to ourselves, because I think most people are most harsh to themselves.
Yeah, of course.
And also the words you use around kids. Yeah. I mean, if you use those words, I think, quite often a lot of mums will call themselves fat or, very negative words, and they're constantly talking about diet, and that is seeping into them at such a young age. Whereas actually, if you never associate those words and use those words, as much as obviously they're going to get other things from the bigger peripheral,
of course,
you can still massively change how they perceive things, which I think is so important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're building in these things from such a young age.
Yeah.
They just think it's normal.
Yeah, and that's all we're trying to do. It's almost a blank slate, isn't it? You've got a child, and it's you who's there to nurture them and educate them. So if we can do it in the way that we think, because there's no manual, if we can do it in the way we think's right, fingers crossed that it'll stead them well in the future.
Parenting's the biggest learning curve of all.
It's massive, absolutely huge.
So I would like to finish off by giving you the floor to share one thing that you think everyone would benefit from knowing.
Oh, one thing that everybody would benefit from knowing. Oh, I suppose I honestly feel that there's elements of life that are competition. So don't practice a bad habit, and if you're going to go for it, go to the win. And as I say, I've taught, but I don't just mean in competition within sport. I just mean in life in general. If you're going for something new or you want to really succeed, treat it as a competition and go for the win. But don't be afraid to not get that goal. Neither it's learn from the loss, take it on the chin, or be upset that you haven't won necessarily. So it pushes you and motivates you more. And that's just the only thing that would be for me. Enjoy the experience, but go for the win and try to win whatever your goal is.
Nice. Push yourself. Keep pushing yourself.
Yeah. I don't think that's a great answer for you, Victoria. Sorry, but
I liked it.
Put me on this. You put me on the spot again. That was all I had.
I know. It's cruel, but yet I kind of like it because it
I like it.
Comes from the heart.
I'm gonna have to do that. Start putting guests on the spot.
So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way of finding you? And I can pop them into the show notes.
So yeah, so on for the podcast, it's Hobby of a Lifestyle, and that's on social media. For my company, it's Green Sky Fitness, and that it's just an email, andy@greenskyfitness.com, and that's on social media and whatnot as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you.
Great conversation. I've really loved it.
It's been excellent. Thank you so much for asking me to come on the show and allow me to be part of it. And all the best with the podcast moving forward and everything else you do in life.
Thank you very much. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to episode 17 of the Live Fit Now podcast. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Andy as much as I did. Having it, I think we covered some really fun, varied and interesting subjects, and he told us some brilliant stories that I think we can all really resonate with. We would love to hear any feedback, or if you've got any questions, you can get in touch with myself or Andy. I will pop all of our links into the show notes. And we would be ever so grateful if you can share with your family and friends. I think the more people that can listen to this conversation, I hope the more people that can be inspired. We are on YouTube, on all of the podcast platforms, and it would be fantastic if you could share on social media. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Until next Thursday.